Hey everybody, it's Camden, back with Generation Z podcast. First of all, I want to thank everyone for the support on Dave's post. He really, honestly, in my opinion, isn't even letting on how much this is a serious thing. His medical condition is something that I'm very concerned with. My heart and love and support goes out to him so undyingly. I can tell that the communities does as well. I want to make everyone aware, though, that content will keep coming. I am here for it. I am way too stubborn to stop speaking truth to power, so I'm not going anywhere. In today's Kraken conversation, I'm speaking with Monica Perez of the Propaganda Report. We talk on censorship, her own site being taken down, Dave and I's PayPal having massive problems. We get into cryptos. We get into megacorporations and their own sovereignty. We get into NFTs. Now, we, of course, also do get into the VAXs, right? And honestly, she ripped this whole thing apart better than I've heard a lot of people. So, on the safe side, because we just can't afford it, I have split this up. I have chopped it up. The entire full uncut interview is on our Patreon. The version here is still going to cover amazing things. She has brilliant takes. I think you guys are going to love this one, and I hope you enjoy. All right, guys. How are we doing today? This is Camden. I am here with Monica Perez of the Propaganda Report. I am very excited to chat with her today, and I'm sure you guys are going to love this conversation. She gets into everything this channel does, and she does a beautiful job at it. So without further ado, I would just want to jump right in and off the bat ask how you feel about the current censorship. I'm sure that you are dealing with plenty of it on your own front, but how is it affecting you, and where do you see it going from here?
Well, thanks very much. Thanks, Camden. I am happy to be here. And that is a topic that has really impacted me in my career. I used to have a radio show on the radio for 8.5 years on terrestrial radio in Atlanta. And I remember in 2018 on Valentine's Day, there was the Parkland shooting in Florida. And I was really good at cracking the code on things. Like I could just pull out immediately all the kind of random reports and see if a timeline works, a narrative works. And I was pretty quickly could crack the code. And I did pretty good on that one too. And finding out that Sheriff Israel worked at that school, and just there were a lot of weird events there, but I could tell right away from the first day or week that something had really changed, and you were just not able to crack the code on false flags or psyops or any kind of wrong story like you could before. And I announced, like, this is the day the internet died. And I didn't expect that in August of that year, my WordPress channel would get taken down. I was set up. It was a trap. And, you know, I'm not techie, so I really never fully recovered. I can tell you what happened if you want to hear it.
Yeah, no, totally. Actually, get into it.
Yeah. So I was never a person, I'm not even going to say the word because of censorship, but like what happened in Connecticut, like I was never a person to dive into that. I remember the day it happened, and I think it was December 2012. And there were some screwy things, but I didn't really get into that one. A lot of other people getting into it.
It was a rough one to touch, period. Yeah.
Yes. And actually there was a radio consultant on the station, didn't work for the station, whatever, who kind of said, "Oh, I know Monica goes out there, not today." And I was like, I'm going to say whatever I want. And he was wrong about what he thought I was going to talk about gun laws or whatever, which I was not. He didn't realize how far the rabbit hole I was. But I didn't, I didn't really touch it too much. Yeah, it was rough. And I don't know if I had a show right around then, but a couple of years later I believe it was in 2018, there was a crazy story, and all I did was post a picture, a couple of links, and the heading, "This is crazy," because I didn't want to touch that. I didn't, there was no reason for me to do that. And the picture was a picture of a victim of the Connecticut event, portrayed as a victim of a similar event in Pakistan, and reported by the BBC as a person of a different name, even though the exact same picture was used.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And when things like that happen, it's I mean, it's no longer, I mean, that's an unavoidable truth. It's something is amiss here.
So it was so crazy though that I thought there is something weird about this. Like I recognized it right away. Why didn't the BBC?
Right.
And I put it was covered in a couple of different outlets, and I put the pictures up and I basically said, think what you will. But it was very weird to me. Well, little did I know it was a trap. It was a trap. So everybody who put that picture up that day, that week, got taken down, especially from WordPress. So they took Alex Jones down,
Yeah.
but does Alex Jones really care if he's on WordPress
No,
or not?
right.
So, but I had 7 years of like really forward looking blog posts. Plus I had put up there every one of my shows. So it was 7 years of my work, and they're all gone now. So like I got the text back, the words I wrote in jumbled format, I could pull back. But all the links, all the pictures, all the media that I had posted there were gone. And, I had a business plan with them. Like I paid extra to have a business platform.
Yeah.
And it was, what can you do? There's nothing you can do. But that was my first experience with censorship. And I can tell you how the difference between how my radio station reacted that day from maybe a year or two later, which was, I thought, very interesting.
Yeah. Right.
So this is what happened. When that happened to me, my radio station thought, and then I got a strike on YouTube for posting a radio show that I did on the air to my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
I got a strike on YouTube. So my radio station let me kind of like use that as a selling point. Like, you can't hear it on YouTube, you can't hear it on WordPress, but we will bring it to you here.
Not bad. Not bad. Yeah.
About a year later, they said, hey, I stopped posting to Facebook. I started getting like trolled pretty bad there. And then they said, hey, if there's a new kind of regime descending on this country, and if you get taken down on Twitter, we wouldn't take you down, but you might have to go, because the backlash against, if they decide to cancel you on Twitter, we won't be able to maintain it. Like, I don't know. So it wasn't like a threat or anything. It was like, look, things have changed. And then in February 2020, I continued to cover a lot of things that I had covered before, but the new owner took over the station, and by the end of the month I was gone.
Yeah.
So I'm waiting for Patreon to take me down. And I probably need to get ahead of that.
I mean, I'm ready for the same kinds of things. I know Whitney Webb specifically literally got taken off Patreon for things not even on Patreon, just like you were saying.
Really?
Yeah, she just posted things to her website.
Wow.
And they said, the things on your website, we can't have, like, you take them down from your website, or we're, like, what? That's not even on.
Oh, I missed that,
platform.
because I've been very scrupulous about Patreon. We just put up audio there so that they can't, it's just not something that's easy for them to identify.
No,
well, I self-chill now. I just chill myself because I can't, I never hold back on, like, I do a podcast, kind of slid that in instead of the radio show. And I never hold back what I tell. It's like a phone call. Like, I'll never hold back on that. But I do hold back. Like, I'll phrase a tweet in a way that isn't combative, but I'm not really combative anyway. That's not, I'm surprised I'm still on Twitter, but they just shadow ban you. Like, you can see.
Oh, you're right. They do that until you give up or whatever it is.
Yes.
I know. So but it doesn't stop there. I don't know if you've dealt with it at all, but Dave and I recently have had like huge problems with PayPal, and they only 2 days ago signed a partnership with the Anti-Defamation League to like control, like, if you want, pull it up on your computer. We could talk about that a sec. It's very strange. Because their whole new I don't know what you want to call it. Their new talking point is, domestic terrorism is the biggest threat to democracy, right? And so the Anti-Defamation League and PayPal are working to control pipelines of white supremacy and domestic terrorism and financial avenues for those people. And all of a sudden, a week or so ago, me and Dave, between us two, can't send any money. He can't send any money to me. And I'm like, okay, send it to my friend. And it sends to my friend, but then as soon as my friend tries to then send it to me, now it's pending again. It's like literal, like, what?
Wow, that's very serious, because the few ways that we do have to generate revenue, PayPal's a big part of that. I better get on that, like, even just to sweep it all the time. I'll tell you, there is a continuum, like that they can say it's white supremacist, which I'm not even really sure what that means, like as a threat. I
Yeah.
understand what terrorism is. I
Right.
assume that they're saying that terrorism is when you do bad things to get other people to change behavior, and
Right.
it's scary, violent things. So
Yeah.
I can understand what they mean by that. But then as it starts to get like domestic terrorism, and they what they're doing is they're putting in that basket of deplorables people who literally like defend the Constitution, use the
Right.
word liberty, use the word patriot, but it's even gotten a little bit bigger than that. So
Yeah.
there's like two more layers. One is they've always talked about militias and sovereign citizens. Now, to me, the militia is one of the few positive requirements in the Constitution of the
Right.
citizen. So it's almost all
Right.
rights, but very rarely are you called upon to assert your defense of those rights. And I feel like the Second Amendment, that it's a mistake to ignore the militia part, not the way the left say that, well, if you're not in a militia, you don't get a gun. My argument is not only do you have gun rights, you kind of have an obligation to
Obligation. Yeah.
have the militia. So
Right.
then they're pushing it further. So the way they tie like militia and sovereign citizens, well, what does it take to be a sovereign citizen? A bug out bag, a prepper.
Yeah.
Now they're bringing it to the natural medicine, self-sustaining,
New age of
people
esoteric, holistic, all of that. Yeah.
who can grow their own food. So if you grow your own food, you're a prepper. Prepper is is a gun guy. It's
Right.
all anything that could possibly give you a way to exist outside, off the grid or outside of the system. They are
Yeah.
demonizing and putting it right into the white supremacy thing, which
Yeah.
is, of course, ridiculous because, everybody wants to be autonomous.
Right. No, that's the weirdest thing to me. At what point did the government stop wanting to help its citizens and exist for its citizens, and instead want to make its citizens exist for it? Kind of create that slave master dynamic in society. I don't know when that flipped.
I would call that the pathocracy. Like it's gotten to the
Mm,
point where it's actually works against you. And I look at that with all the big pharma stuff. I feel
yeah.
like even all the COVID restrictions and lockdowns, like I could literally argue that the things that they are telling us are for our individual and collective health are actually the opposite of that.
It's like top down control of everything. Last night I watched poker players playing with a mask on, right? That takes away half the game.
Wow, that's crazy. Now that would give a benefit to people who are really not that good, but it would really
Absolutely.
impair the living of somebody who's mastered the
Who's
art.
on that? Yeah, absolutely.
Wow,
And
wow.
then
But they don't
people,
care who they hurt.
no, right. I mean, if I was playing poker that way, I literally walk in with a mask, sunglasses, and hat. No one could read
Yeah,
anything.
hazmat uniform.
Right. Um, but and
Might as
then
well
wait,
play on a
like,
computer.
yeah, no, I know like people in the service industry, you like for a while now they've been able to take off masks while they're like serving tables and stuff. And they're like, I forget that I don't have a mask on anymore, and I have to like not do resting bitch face thing. I mean, Joe Biden a couple months ago was like, the intelligence community has ascertained two possible scenarios. Sure, okay. But recently, I don't know if you've seen,
Mhm.
yeah, no, I'm sure you've got stuff to say. The China state media put out a cartoon where everyone was like, where Uncle Sam was like, look, China virus. And over here under a blanket was Fort Detrick. Do you know anything about Fort Detrick?
No, I don't know anything about that. And I'll tell you why I never really dig into the details on that,
Yeah,
although I would like to get educated on
yeah,
it. Is I have, it's, you know what it's like probably, but for me, I do a daily show and I have to curate things all the time. So
yeah,
I have a really honed truth dar, and I do not cover things that have two features. One is everybody's covering it, so I don't really have to. I don't
right,
really need to do that. And everybody's covering it. Why? Like, is it meant for me
right.
to think that and focus on it as a distraction? So yesterday I was rereading the 2017 SPARS document. Are you familiar with
Oh
that?
yeah, John Hopkins one. Yeah,
Yes. It's just unbelievable. It's so bold. It's so
and
bold.
no, it really is bold. I mean, it the same boldness to me as I think it's the 2030 agenda from the World Economic Forum. This past year, they took it down to the 2025 agenda. Like they're literally pushing up their timelines on these things. I mean, there's a real boldness, and actually, that's what I wanted to actually get into. Why do you think that boldness is? Is it because they're almost not panicking, but scrambling? They're like, oh, people are starting to call bullshit on us. Because more and more I see, like, if you get on Twitter, of course, the echo chamber is real, but the more and more people I talk to in the real world, loads of those people, and maybe it's just because I'm from, Georgia of the United States and it's the South, but loads of those people realize, yeah, this is all really, really fucky. And I also at the same time realize I shouldn't really say anything about how fucky it is, like on Facebook, on Twitter, because that's where people start to have problems with you and get taken down and all those things. So as much as people aren't seeming like everyone's realizing it on social media, it feels like everyone really is, and just also realizes not to talk about it.
That I hadn't thought of that particular angle, although
Yeah.
what I have thought about could fold in with that. And
Okay.
so there's a couple of different things. They always have this idea of like revelation of the method, that
Yeah.
you have to tell them what you're doing. They have to do it consensually.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
started thinking, okay, so they, like with the vaccine, the coercion, the propaganda is so intense, but ultimately they need you to ask for it. It's almost like a satanic ritual, it feels like
Yeah.
to me. But I could take another tack. You could this, and this is the kind of thing that we have evidence that our government and their affiliates have done in the past, is that they do care about liability. They care about keeping things quiet. They don't want to be outed. And then a bigger thing though, here I have finally realized, because I live in LA, it
Mm,
seems to me that this is a population scale psychological experiment. They are literally trying to figure out people's breaking point for
yeah.
submission
Yeah.
and psychosis. Like those are the two things I think that they
Right.
are really looking at.
Right. Literally force you to follow the rules until you just give up and say, whatever, do whatever. I'll just listen. Okay, I'm done. Please just give me the ability to go to the beach back. Please just let me go back to the movies.
Well,
Like,
right. So now they are, this is, I just had this insight this yesterday,
yeah.
that so they are going to kind of let you do that stuff. They're going to bring it back. So they take everything away. They take everything away, and then they're going to give you some things back, right? But what they're not going to give back to you is the stuff that they really cared about. So they don't really care
Right.
that you don't go to the beach. So they're not going to give that back to you. But here's the other thing, is that I've been reading about World War One,
Hmm.
and I always knew this about World War Two, that Eisenhower actually prolonged the war to give Russia an advantage. I don't know if you know about that,
Yeah. Right. Right.
but
Right. I'm with you.
I didn't know this. I just ordered a book called Prolonging the Agony,
Mm.
that the guys from History Homos recommended, where they talk about how World War One was prolonged for years.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And
No.
right. So now I think about that, and I think about the Civil War, and think about these lengthy wars.
Hmm.
And that's really what it takes. That kind of destruction is
Yeah.
probably what it really takes to change a culture and change an economy. So they can bring those little things back to you, but the
Yeah.
war will go on. The war in the background will go on, and will be an excuse for all the things that you eventually have to get used to. And I think they're also at the same time trying to downgrade us, like the way I have read Servando
Hmm.
Gonzalez. It didn't even snap. I read this book years ago, but now it's snapping,
Uh-huh.
that they did it on purpose to Cuba, and that
Right.
they
Okay.
deindustrialized Cuba as the most industrialized country in that region. They
Yeah.
chose that one to deindustrialize. And that was like an initial experiment. Now, it's hard to believe an experiment like that goes on for 50 years before they keep it going, but maybe they've been doing it in other countries too. And it took 50 years to get to the US. But it
Right.
seems to me that they're bringing it here. That when I see what's going on in South America and Latin America, the Caribbean, Cuba, Haiti, Bolivia already got taken care of. Venezuela is ongoing, but the Northern Triangle, I think that, and Biden made a speech about this in December 2018 about reasserting our leadership, our hegemony in the Western hemisphere. And I
Yeah.
feel like they're giving them that, they're giving us that. And so the US is sunsetting globally, that Russia, but really China, will be sunrising globally as the global hegemon, maybe bring the power back to that Eurasian continent.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that could also be why we're experiencing supply chain issues, why Trump put up trade barriers. Like, what is this about? This is weird. Are we going
Yeah.
for autarky? Are we going for
Yeah.
a scenario where they actually want us to be self-sufficient in case there's a war? And I think it's not self-sufficiency they want, it's isolation. And
Right.
the Eurasian continent doesn't really need trade. And North America doesn't really either, but to the extent that they want to let the East rise, it at this point might be their advantage to keep us from really being able to trade. And of course, I think that's going to hit like the dollar, and then you have the digi-dollar thing. And
oh no, we're going to get into crypto. Don't worry. Absolutely.
I've always been a skeptic of
Me
crypto.
too. I don't own a single dollar of it.
Oh, really? Because it was not only because it has no inherent value and there's no way to value it.
Blockchain terrifies me. Terrifies me.
Do you know Alison McDowell?
Yeah.
And of course, it's a stepping stone to a cashless society. That's the other thing. But yeah, so Alison McDowell, the Ice Age farmer, they talk about how blockchain is the total surveillance tool. Yeah. And even the Space Force, is like that's the globe is the outer globe.
No, I mean, and it's more interesting than anything to me about all of this is they have everyone so excited about blockchain, and all like they've got the Q people excited about blockchain because it's like the Space Force and the NSA has the blockchain. We can prove the fraud. They have the crypto digital like kids that are digitally native excited about blockchain because they can do these cryptos and they can watch Elon Musk tweet about cum rocket and then make money off of it on Coinbase. Then they've got the liberal, the left, the medically, inclined, like following this narrative. They're excited about blockchain because that's how they're going to verify your digital wallet and your vaccine passport. They have everyone in all different areas.
Yes.
So
didn't
excited.
Lagarde say something about that, about the digital money? And they had a Black Mirror on that. And it's funny because many years ago, when Bloomberg wanted to ban sugary drinks in New York. So I was real New Yorker, and I smoked a pack of Marlboro Reds a day for like 20 years. That's funny. I went to California for like and I came back to New York, and in the time I was gone, New York had turned into California, and I was like just so sick about it. And I couldn't believe. And I would smoke anyway because I was a real New Yorker, and they tried to do that shit. And New Yorkers would come up to me and say, "Hey, honey, it's a new world now. They will really find the crap out of you. You really can't. And now they're going to hold the restaurant owner responsible. Like you can't." And I didn't then after that. But I said, "Hey, man, they're going to come for your coffee next. They're going to come for your ice cream next." And he came for the soda next. And I said, you know what they'll do? I said, I wonder if they'll ever have the technology where they'll just tax it out of existence, but they won't tax the first ice cream cone out of existence. But if you try to have a second one, on a Wednesday, you eat your first one on a Sunday, you try to have the second one on a Wednesday, the tax will be 500%. They can get the technology. So that's why I think we're in a more vulnerable spot than humans have ever been in since civilization has started, as really, like, even they say writing started as a way to keep track of taxation, and civilization started as a way to enslave people, and agricultural revolution was about the grain as a unit of like being able to extract your value. But this is the worst because now they do have the technology for total control.
I know. I mean, these smart cities, I mean, all that blockchain excitement, right? You can tie it right into what China is doing in full swing right now with social credit scores, because they are blockchain based. And if you just like you're talking about a cigarette, if you're on a bus and you smoke a cigarette on a bus, by the time you get off the bus, they've already ID'd you on facial recognition. They've taken money out of your account for the ticket because they've got it tied in. And then they've also detracted from your social credit score, which ties where you can go to school, where you can like literally travel, where you can like all of these it's everything.
So this goes to something that kind of answers the question about why is that on there? And something I've called like backdoor fascism or reverse fascism or soft fascism. So the way I always thought about fascism was you would have a government with guns, and the corporation would tap into the government to use those guns, that coercion, to get what they want, which is money and like outright wealth, as opposed to like a communism thing where they have to kind of hide it.
Right.
In order to live
Right.
really high on the hog, like you have
Yeah.
like a shitty front and then you go in the back. But the
Yeah.
fascist system, you can be open about it.
Very open.
But
Yeah.
but now it's like the opposite in that the government is incapable of the coercion. And the people won't take it. And they try to tear down the Constitution. They try to give the UN, they try to do all of those things, but they can't actually get it done. People just won't stand for it. And so what they do is they leave it in place. And this is something that I was shocked when I saw it. I was shocked like several times when I dug into the whole public-private partnership thing. It's called the human rights industry.
Yeah.
How they like recruit refugees from other countries. A specific country like I don't know if it's the Cape Verde Islands go to Brockton, Massachusetts, and Somalia goes to Minneapolis,
Right.
whatever.
Yeah. Right.
But the NGOs, the non-governmental organizations, they don't have the same standards of transparency and accountability. You would think they would have more, but they have less. And it's the mercenaries, like over in the Middle East and stuff, when we have to pull our soldiers out, they replace them with the mercenaries. So they have a way of circumventing the things that we think are consistent with the law. So as they've grown, as specifically these all-powerful global corporations have grown, like in the World Economic Forum and stuff like that, and of course, this Great Reset thing takes out all the mom and pop shops, anybody who could stand up and give you an alternative, they can then come in and be the only game in town. And they can say, yes, we have a vaccine mandate for our employees and our customers, but you don't have to shop here. It's like, you know what? But you're the only store.
You can't, yeah, right.
You're the only store. And how did that happen? I mean, Amazon's a great experience. It's like, okay, stay home, be a shut-in, be on the virtual world. And if you try to exercise your rights, your First Amendment rights through those screens, we will PayPal your ass.
Yeah.
So, you
everything runs off Amazon's cloud servers, everything, literally. Yeah.
Yeah. Everything. And you're neutered by that. All your rights are neutered by that without firing a shot.
Yeah. Right.
Without tearing down the Bill of Rights.
Right. Absolutely. Because they've done, I mean, Jen Psaki made a very big allusion to it the other day in a press conference. She said, there won't be a vaccine mandate. That's not the government's place to do so. What we will call on is for private entities, for local governments and ordinances to put those in place to help a full vaccination effort come to fruition. So literally already telling you, we're not gonna, not us, but we're gonna make sure everyone else does, and everything else, you can't do anything unless you do.
Absolutely. And it's a self-selective mechanism. You identify yourself. But let me ask you this, like, so that could be a part, I try to figure out how they can look at if the people who take the vaccine are the people who are obedient, are the people who follow them, and there is something actually bad about the vaccine, doesn't it leave them with this group of people? What do you think about that?
Well, okay. So I've had this, back and forth thought, which way is it? Yeah, absolutely. You can. No, right. That's a great point. Honestly, I wanted to jump back a second to Amazon. We started talking about their like totalitarians, like sovereignty almost. So parallels for me, if you'll remember the Dutch East India Company, right? The mega conglomerate that was of the British Empire era. They basically, I mean, they largely helped finance and get America to rebel against the British. There's lots of speculation that they didn't want the British East India Company's tea on their boats, and that's why they got the Boston Tea Party to happen, things like that, right? So they basically said, no, fuck you, we're gonna make our own country with America, right? Okay, now because we don't want to pay your taxes, and all the founding fathers in America were really thugs anyways that have been whitewashed, so they really used them. Amazon, it is getting to the point where Jeff Bezos can say, look, NASA, I'll give you $2 billion if you let me go to the moon. I will literally finance my own way off the planet. I will is he almost debatably trying to create Dutch East India Company style his own sovereignty? Because we've seen these people try to, like Facebook and Amazon both, looking at buying like their own little island type things to establish their own country, not pay taxes anymore. They've played with those ideas. So do you think that there's a personal sovereignty for those mega conglomerates again?
That's very interesting that you put it that way, because until now, I couldn't really think through, and I hope I don't lose the thread of it, how that could be when
Hmm.
something like that could be when Bezos, I had this thing called created persons.
Yeah.
So I think that Gates was
Oh
a
yeah,
created
he's definitely a
person.
character and playing his character.
Yes,
Right.
yes. And even Fidel Castro may have been a created person.
Yes.
And then you have so Bezos's grandfather, with whom he was close,
Yeah.
was the head of the Atomic Energy Commission or something like that at the
I
time.
think I know that. I think I've read that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was actually the least that I did a list of the 10 big tech guys, or the biggest, richest tech guys in America. And I found 1 degree of separation between every single one of them and like the military industrial complex, like really seriously. And he
Really,
was like
only
one that
one
was,
degree separation. That's
well,
even
like
extra.
right.
Yeah.
He was actually 2 degrees. Like he was the one I was like,
Right.
The
Yeah.
only other one was Steve Jobs. But here's the thing. So his parents didn't go to college or
Yeah.
anything,
Yeah. Yeah.
but he was adopted, and his father was a
Oh, his biological father.
CIA agent in Syria.
Mm.
And doesn't mean that his adopted parents needed to know anything, but they may well have known. They insisted that he go to college, like that was the only placement criterion for the baby. So I don't, those were the two sketchy ones, right?
Like,
But they're
oh
still
wow,
close.
that brings up a whole that's like a whole rabbit hole for me now. That's
All right,
amazing.
so hold that thought,
Yeah,
and let
go
me give you
ahead.
this, and then give me that. So it's so if Bezos is a creation of the defense industry, of the military industrial complex, and he is trying to divert, divert this sort of governmental authority,
Hmm.
then maybe that is part of that reverse fascism that I'm thinking about,
Yeah, no, absolutely.
that they can't get the world government going. So if you look at the 2010 Rockefeller Foundation document, it's the
Hmm.
technology scenarios.
Right.
Most people focus on lockstep, but if you look at Hack Attack is a different scenario where nation states break down, and
Hmm.
but so does information, so does transmission of information and trade and stuff. So the virtual prison descends. Your physical mobility is limited, but there's no like government anymore. And what fills the gap is it basically says it. It's not word for word, but it's very clear. Big philanthropy will be the de facto world government then.
Right, because I mean
So
that's how it'll operate.
yeah,
That's yeah, okay.
so they could never get the UN blue helmets to be our army. They couldn't do that. So they're doing something else. And what it is that they're doing is they're taking that, I mean, potentially, they're just making it's that reverse fascism. They're just making it so government was actually a protection, because it was a negotiated position. And they took government, used it to absorb all of our rights, kind of Albert J. Knox style, from our enemy, the state. And
Right.
now that they have it all, they get to redirect all that money and power. And I always said this, like the government research is making robots that will take our job. They're taking taxpayer
Yeah.
dollars to do something that would never happen in the free market. And that's why I was always really
Right.
opposed to government research. And look where we are. And it's probably too late.
I mean, that builds right into my next question, I think. One, we talked a lot about crypto. Bitcoin seems to me to be, I don't know if you've poured into like it being really like created by probably the NSA and the CIA, but it seems to be a CIA Chinese joint weapon against the dollar for whatever reason. I don't know their game there, really. I can't figure out why that's advantageous. But it really seems like it's working.
I mean, the IMF did a blog post that was just like, no big deal, that the only way to get negative interest rates to really suck away. And this idea that China and the US are like, somehow there's anybody in the US in a position of power who is defending us against China. That's not how it works. And it's not how it works in the Cold War either. It's the coordination behind the scenes. The Cold War was a defense industry construct. And what they did in Russia was psychological experiments and stuff that they couldn't get away with here. Like behind, at one level, if there was a hot war or Cold War with China, it could also be collusion.
Right. Absolutely. That's exactly what I mean. And so, I mean, I guess to my best guess, it's kind of to usher in Fed coins, to usher in Bitcoins, things that they can absolutely top to bottom control. Because my favorite point about blockchain, hold on, I got to say this, is like, okay, right now you get a direct deposit from your day job. It goes to your bank account. You can go spend that money. If you now get paid in we'll call it even a Fed coin, you get paid on that blockchain. Yes, blockchain super, can't, no one can hack it. It's great, so secure, it's great, it's super encrypted. But once you, that's just people you don't want into your blockchain and to your identity. Once you've given someone access to your blockchain to pay you, they have access to your blockchain. So now they can see if you spend it on drugs, cigarettes, hookers, whatever it is you go spend their money on, they can follow their money forever, because that's
Oh,
how
I
blockchain
didn't know
works.
that that was how
Yeah.
it works.
No, literally, well, blockchain, it chains together the trail of money.
Oh my
So
God.
once you
So it's
give them,
exactly the opposite of what you're hoping.
right, but it's only, but it does it at the same time as being from link to link, being anonymous when you don't want any, like, if you, but if you give them access, they know that it's you, like, because they have to pay you.
I mean, to
So
me, yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
go ahead.
But I always thought, like, just from minute one
Yeah.
is I mean, I grew up, I'm the youngest of nine. I grew up in like a rough neighborhood, and not a rough neighborhood, but a rough
New York, it's New
environment.
York is New York.
Yeah.
It might
And
not
you
even
just,
matter.
yeah,
It's a rough city.
yeah. And I know people who, I mean, the lines between what was legal and illegal, black markets and gray markets, like we weren't taught about the laws. We were taught about, I mean, I was raised Catholic and I was
Yeah.
not taught to obey laws. I was taught to obey morality.
Morality,
So
absolutely.
the
Yeah.
idea was like, if you want to do drugs, you know, I'm having a cocktail here. If God gave you a weed and you want to smoke a little bit of that and you can still go to work in the morning, take care of your kids,
And do the right
then
things.
yeah, use it in a sacred way or whatever. You can do that, you know, but and if you don't do that, then you enter into the sin phase. But
Yeah.
if somebody else is growing it and you want to buy it from them, there's like nothing wrong with that at all. And it's only bad, you know, and like labor unions are fine unless you use coercion. Like you have to
Yeah.
think about the moral position. So for us, we would get around, you know, we would get around laws that were not
Right.
just, and like even
Yeah.
immigration, my father's like, immigration laws are terrible. Like you should,
Yeah.
people have the right to work and travel. I'm not sure that people who don't speak English should have the right to vote away my rights because they don't really understand the
Right.
Constitution.
That New
But
York
why do
Times
they,
article today
you
is that you don't
oh,
really
was it
have to be a
today?
citizen to vote or whatever it was.
Yeah,
I
but
was
I mean, it should be the opposite. It should be
right.
completely divorce citizenship and voting from the right to work and travel. One
Right.
thing is a government
Absolutely.
construct, and the other
Absolutely.
is a free human action. So right away when they started with Bitcoin stuff, like this is the libertarian solution. I'm like, absolutely is not, because a cashless society,
Yeah.
you are absolutely forced to follow the rules. I cannot make a transaction with my Irish cousins
Yeah.
who come
No.
into town if they don't show me their papers. Like
Right.
that's not okay.
Exactly. And so to build exactly into my question, you get, I guess it was a way to usher in this actual, you know, follow everything, follow the money always. But it seems like faith in the US dollar internationally is crumbling, like massively. People, countries as a whole are selling their treasury bonds. The faith in the dollar is going down. Russia took out any reserve dollars it has. How long do you give the US dollar?
I give it till 2010. Like
Yeah,
I'm one
okay.
of those,
I hear
I'm
that.
one of
I hear
those
that.
people who
Yeah.
like I was like, come on, like how
Yeah.
long can this last? So
Yeah.
this is how I think about it. The debt now, which is
Mhm.
accelerating, it's like logarithmic,
I
like
mean,
it's
yeah, no, I
yeah,
thought it was exponential back in 2010. It
yes,
is.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. And so my claim 2 years ago before this even happened was the debt cannot be repaid. That issue cannot be resolved within this paradigm.
No,
It cannot be
literally.
resolved within this paradigm. Therefore, we need a new paradigm. I
Yeah.
don't need it. I don't want it. I'm not
No,
suggesting
no,
it.
but
I'm saying
that's the
it
only
is
option.
forcing the question
Yeah.
of requiring a new paradigm. Like that is what it's doing. And the new paradigm is the Fed bit or whatever, the
Yeah, right.
digidollar.
Right. I mean, they did seize um I think you got into the capital pipeline thing. Where on earth did they get off seizing $2.5 million and then saying that this is from the Capital Pipeline hack, but also because it's Bitcoin and it's anonymous, just like we said about blockchain, we can't pay back Capital Pipelines that 2.5 million that they paid in ransom. Like, how, what?
And that was a little bit of a setup, I think, but also
I
because
think
the
the U.S.
cyber
government paid someone to do it, and they're like,
Yeah.
"We're gonna keep half. You keep half. All right, cool. Yeah, okay."
and the Colonial Pipeline probably had a reason to do it, either blackmail or whatever. But they did. There were big articles that came out, and I'm not savvy enough on it to be able to pull it apart. But about Ross Ulbricht, that they got $1 billion
Oh,
worth of his Bitcoin. So it probably wasn't $1 billion when they put him in jail and
right.
initially stole his Bitcoin. I mean, you know the story of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
guys who the DEA agent and the Secret Service agent who went to jail for malfeasance in their investigation against Ross Ulbricht, and he was not allowed to bring that up in his trial. Which, I
Right.
mean, anybody who believes in Trump, who thinks that he's anything but an order taker, I mean, explain Ross Ulbricht to
Albright.
me.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. No.
Oh, do you not pronounce the C?
I have no idea.
Oh,
I mean, I
okay.
don't
Because
know.
I've been trying to talk to. I have asked his mom once and again to
Really?
come on my show, but I don't know if I'll find her. I'll find her, but
That's funny.
I'm sure
No,
she's
I
quite
don't
busy.
know. That's that. I
I'll
mean,
have
I'm
to hear it.
Southern U.S. person. I don't think we say words right, anyways.
Well,
Yeah.
I feel like you have the right to pronounce your name however you want, and I
Right.
usually try to find someone pronouncing. Like I'll
They're
look for Lynn, his mom, and I'll
right.
listen and see how she
How
pronounces
she
it.
says it. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
But
That's right.
they said they took $1 billion of his dollars worth of his Bitcoin, and how would that be possible? I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's things like that. Is it anonymous or is it not? I don't understand.
Well,
So
when I got a wallet, I had to take a picture of my face with my driver's license next to it and write the
yes.
date on a piece of paper. And I was like, never in my life have I actually had to give so much identity as to time,
Yeah.
place,
Yeah.
all of my, I mean, never. And this
Yeah.
was for a Coinbase wallet. So, I
Right.
mean,
Yeah, no, right.
I was so engaged in the process that I should have just stopped, you know,
Right.
I should
Yeah,
have
no,
just
right.
stopped.
I get you. I mean, that's those like, okay, I day traded cryptos in college. Like this is like 5 years ago now. So, but like since then, I've not like I started to realize all this about it. Like I was like, no, I'm not. I can't be out here
Yes.
preaching like how evil it is, and then
Alison McDowell's
also
like that too.
like wanting to make money off of it. Even if I realize that I can catch some patterns and can maybe make a couple $100, and then I'll cash out before everything crumbles. That's no, you can't be that hypocritical.
I wanted to. I mean, I wasn't really tempted, but like Palantir, you know, Palantir is Palantir is big data that was seeded by the CIA.
Right. Yeah.
And obviously that's what it is. That is definitely going to be the company that lasts forever. You know, as Warren Buffett says, if you know there's a company going to be there in 20 years, buy it no matter what the price, basically.
Right.
And I just can't. Like I saw it at 15. I was like, that's a buy. And I was like, I just cannot.
It's a buy, but it's not a buy for me.
Right. I cannot do it. I can't do it. But then, you know, you could go down that rabbit hole with everything. But I feel like that steps over the line. I had briefly bought a vaccine research, you know, a couple of not much, but just a few shares of a vaccine research company. Right. And it was before any suggestion that there would be coercion, but it was like a gene therapy thing. And then I sold it. I was like, yuck. And I said that out loud on my show. And somebody sent me like a nasty grin, like, how could you? And I was like, I sold it. But, you know, it's just hard because there's like almost, you know, as far as the economy goes and stock and stuff, some of these companies, if they don't play ball, like I always felt if a public figure gets bribed, you shouldn't punish the company. No. The chances are the company would much rather compete. Why is a public figure getting bribed even relevant to a private entity? What kind of power does that public figure have? What kind of power is he abusing? Who has the public trust?
That's what you should ask the question.
Yeah, I feel like bribery, you should be able to bribe anybody you want. If it's going to help you, then that in itself would highlight a problem with the system.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's the same way to me. I mean, Trump and Q and all of that, one massive top bottom psyop too, and like trust the plan and wait and do nothing thing. But interesting to me is how worked up everyone got over the tax codes and like how little he paid in taxes, all those things. I mean, he didn't handle it the right way. He almost said it in the debates when they asked him, but he was almost just like, and what he should have just said was, that's the system and the tax codes that you've put in place. I am literally just doing the tax codes. Point out Bezos, point out Musk, point out all of them that pay literally only hundreds of dollars in taxes every year. Like, say it's the system. It's not me. I'm
Yeah.
literally using the system.
I would love somebody to point out, first of all, that real estate is just
Yeah.
has so many tax advantages and debt and everything. It's like, why is the interest on your mortgage tax deductible, but not your rent? You know, like it's just everything financial. Your insurance is tax deductible, but not your medical bills.
Right.
But I would like someone to point out that anytime anyone suggests that an income tax, raising income tax, that you could raise income tax on the rich, by definition, you cannot do that, because income tax is only on people who are earning money, producing through the sweat of their brow, as opposed to the idle rich. It cannot be done. And
they're
really
not doing income.
It's only there in my opinion, because it's really very small number. It's like $1.7 trillion is federal income tax revenue, as opposed to the whatever, it's 7 trillion they spent. But in my opinion, it is only there to absorb all the excess wealth of a professional class that still has to understand. And to function. So I know Michael Malice uses the expression the cathedral, and it came from, I think, Moldbug or whatever, but I always thought of it in a different way, even before I ever heard that expression, that the media, academia, and politicians all, they are the three groups where they tell you what to do and they tell everybody to do, but they never, ever have any consequences, like real consequential impact.
Okay, you froze.
Did I lose you?
You froze for a second. Rewind. You said they have no consequential impact, and then you froze.
Yeah. So there's no consequential impact. They really don't get if they do something wrong, it doesn't come back to haunt them. Whereas if you, as a person in the professional class or whatever, making money, a businessman or a restaurant owner, you could even be like an absolute, like not even speak English and be a successful businessman in this country. Those people all have to understand cause and effect. They have to understand feedback. They have to fit in. They have to be polite. They have to do all of the things that I think of as morality and truth.
Right. Yeah.
So that class must have that. So even if you don't believe in God, I try to be moral. Like it's my driving thing. Like I really, really care about that. I don't, it could be a psychological operation imposed upon us from a totally amoral elite, which we know they are.
Don't act with morals at all. Right.
Yeah, but they need us to, so they can trust us, so that we can move forward, because actually the laws of math, to me, like seeing a building that's plumb and tall is good because it's true.
Yeah.
And it's, it's a testament to truth, to objectivity.
Yeah.
So we are the most dangerous, the people who have had to live by those rules that we know are true.
Right. Oh, I actually really, really like that perspective. I hadn't quite ever put it that way. That's pretty.
Yeah. And they just can't risk that we're all going to go Ron Paul at some point.
Right.
So they have to make sure it's very expensive to be Ron Paul. So his wife put him through medical school. Right. No way, man. You're in debt till you're 35. You go to medical school, whatever. And that's probably how they get them to sell out anyway.
Yeah,
you're in all this debt. When you're finished with the debt, you get a mortgage. You're in all that debt. When you're in the midst of that, you have kids. You live close to the city. They go to school for $20,000 a year.
Yeah.
You're it's just this cycle of hobbling you until you're so exhausted that you have to retire on what little you have.
Little you have left. Absolutely.
And those are that's just for the good people.
Yeah. Right. No, exactly. And then speaking on the idle rich, I wanted your perspective. Last thing, I guess, is what we'll do. Oh, shit. NFTs. I'm seeing them honestly as a new, speaking on the tax codes, a new tax scam, a new way around it all. Jack Dorsey selling his first tweet ever for 2.9 billion. And then getting to say he donates it. Well, now that's a tax write-off now.
Oh, yes. That is how how that works with stocks, right?
Right.
So you get stock and it can go through the roof, and you put it in and you get a tax deduction. The math is a little hard. I always forget how to do it. It's
literally hard on purpose. Yeah. Like I've tried to go through tax codes just to like really get what games they're playing. But
that one
ridiculous.
thing, I wouldn't be surprised if it is the NFT thing, because if you take something that's had tremendous gains, it is a tax deduction. The whole thing is a tax deduction, even if the initial
Yeah.
amount, you know,
Yeah.
it's
Right.
forget it. I'm sure it is like a
No,
scam like
well,
that.
I mean, just even in simple terms, okay,
Yeah.
Lindsay Lohan sold a Ethereum NFT for, we'll use simple numbers. It was like 15 grand something, but we'll just say $1,000. So if she sells one at $1,000, and then she's now set the market for that at $1,000, and then if she sells 9 more, so 10 total at $1,000 each, and then donates 9,000, she can do a tax write-off of a loss of 9,000 and keep the 1,000 free. Now make that amount anything you want.
Right. Yeah. And what, yeah. So that is the best explanation, but there could also be, two other elements that are a little more esoteric, but like
Yeah.
the blockchain thing, if it's hers, right, that's like a piece of her DNA, right?
Yeah.
That stretches out to you as the buyer. Like that's where the value is. It's almost
Right. No, yeah, these
right. It's
I
almost
mean,
like a genetic umbilical cord between you and it. But there's also could be this idea of the potlatch, you know, the potlatch where they were so rich that they could just throw stuff away. So I saw
yeah.
a World Economic Forum blog where they said it's disgusting how much richer rich people are than poor people. And there's a bunch of different ways you can handle it, this, that, the other. And what
You
we
could
think is
literally
the best way.
make them spend bullshit money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is what they said. What we really want to do, what we think is the best answer is a hyper tax on luxury goods. And of course, what that is
Yeah.
that means that Ron Paul, you know, the professionals get none of it.
Right.
And the billionaires get to have stuff that you can't have, even artificial scarcity like diamonds and stuff. Like it's how much does it piss them off that I'm very happy with my giant diamond ring? Like I love it. Like this is what I got for being an investment banker, you know?
Right. Yeah.
But that's not okay.
How
You know?
how happy am I with my Kings of Leon NFT album?
Do you have it?
No. Someone they sold
There's not
that
just
for like
one. Oh, it's just one.
okay, like you could. That's the weirdest thing about it all to me. You could like Kings of Leon did sell their album as an NFT. Someone bought it for like 26 something million dollars. Okay, so that person owns the album, but everyone else can still stream it on any of those apps, and all the royalties still go to Kings of Leon, and all the like. I don't understand what you paid for.
I mean, what does blockchain look like? Like, could they look at it on a screen
and get
literally
that
from themselves to the Kings of Leon?
Yeah, no, they could like they can have a same way you like kind of, you know, you have those framed things of platinum record type things. Like you could have one of those of it. There's not always a physical version of an NFT, but there always is a digital version. But basically, really, the only thing that these do is like you have your phone and you're like, yeah, but look at these NFTs that I own. Like I get like literally like that's just to show people to be in Decentraland. If you've ever heard of that, have you ever heard of that?
No.
It's an Ethereum based like digital realty game. So like you can buy land in the digital currency space. So like to me, it's all in a mechanism. Like apartments are getting bullshit. They're all getting smaller. They're all getting way more in rent. They're all getting like less things you actually have. The game is to get everyone into just really pods where you literally really maybe have a couple like things of cabinets for pantry and food for your actual body, but then everything else is just on your screen, and you live in the digital world, and you bring friends over to your big pretty digital world house, not your pod that you're in the real life. But you know what I mean?
Have you heard Alison McDowell talk about something like that?
Yes. Yeah. The part of that where I draw it from is her. Exactly.
Yes. And it's really hard to get your mind around. Like from her perspective, she's one of those very authentic, sincere liberals, which is very hard to come by. It's like, and I don't have a problem with like, I have just as much of a problem with a neoconservative as I have with, you know, a neoliberal.
Conservative anymore.
Yeah,
really
exactly.
Bullshit.
So I understand the old school, like, you know, bleeding heart, liberal, anti-war, whatever. Like I understand that.
A true liberal, yes.
I'm probably too left brain for that, but I get it. And that's where she comes from. So from her point of view, she will say that they're making like welfare this private commodity, her social
Yeah.
impact bonds and all that. And this is where she gave me this idea that having a market where every single solitary human being is your customer, and doing that, like big pharma is a great way to do that with vaccines, because they give you this thing that they tell you is a necessity, but all necessities are lack and scarcity. Like that's what the earth is all about. It's like food, water, air. Like you could just get it all. But if they tell you this now as a necessity, they have a 7 billion person market. And she's saying the same thing basically for like welfare. Like they imagine you being a welfare case, and that's this big market for bonds and all that. So when she puts the welfare delivery as the product, so maybe the provider, charter school or whatever, the provider gets the money.
Yeah.
And they have to deliver the product. So you would cost the system $1 million. The provider says, I'll do it for 750. And 750 would be break even for the shit you were getting before. But if he can put you in a digital world and lower your life expectancy, then it won't cost him as much. And
less.
I think that's the gist of what she was saying. And I like it makes things make sense to me, except for like the mechanisms are a little elusive because it gets into blockchain, it gets into the public-private thing, gets into a level of finance, social impact bonds. I haven't really looked into it, but I think it gets complicated, but she sure has mastered it.
She speaks
and for a
so
right
well
brain
on
chick, she's like eating my lunch.
Yeah, absolutely. She speaks really well on those things. Those are things that I thrive on, like learning about and wondering, okay, where's the game here? Not that I really know, and I'll ask this question, like, is it too late? Is there anything for us to do about all of this that we've talked about in the last hour? We sit here and speculate on, I think this is what they're trying. I think this is what they're trying. Obviously, we don't want any of it to happen, actually. So like, how do we not have it happen?
I concluded a while back that there's only one possible answer, and I'm beginning to think that it is actually the answer. And we kind of touched on a piece of it earlier in this. They are practically forcing us to get the vaccines, but not actually forcing it. The only thing that stands between you and them is the strength of your character.
Yeah.
And since it's the only thing you can control, I figured, well, hopefully there's a God. And these guys are obviously evil. And if I can just stand my ground, maybe I'll get to heaven. But I don't even know if there's a God. So it's kind of hard to think like that. But now when I look at it, I'm like they've changed their strategy for sure. And they actually, I saw it when they said we were going from getting the product out, getting money from it, getting for it from the government, getting the liability waivers from the government. And now we're going to the demand side of the lobbying, to where we want people to demand it. But it does seem to me that since, and I know it's always good to end on a hopeful note, it's hopeful, but it's hard. It's like, I have a son who has Down syndrome, and I always thought it would be sad. It's not sad. It's happy. It's joyful.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's a lot of work.
No, right.
Yeah.
I speak as someone with autism. Like I have the hardest time reading people, and I've done so much work on actually being able to communicate with people, type of thing. So like it's hard. It's hard. Yeah.
It's not bad or sad or less. It's just hard.
Yeah.
So that's what I feel about this. It's like we have spent our lives, many of us think that we have good character. I would make fun of people who I would say when Obama, they would call my show and they would say, Obama, he violates the Constitution. And then when it was Trump, literally, this is my favorite quote, I've been quibbling about semantics when I quote the Constitution.
Right.
So like, that's what they're saying to me. And I would say, hey man, you think you would have grabbed a musket, but you wouldn't have. You would have grabbed a sign and go sat with the red coats behind the line.
Yeah,
it's like, what I'm saying. You're not grabbing a musket. But right now, if the fighters that are getting praised from Tom Hanks saying like just sitting down, or Simone Biles saying just quit, like be a hero, just quit, if that's what that side is saying, all I'm saying is you don't even need to grab a musket. All you have to do is stand your ground. It's not going to be easy, but you personally have the power to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly where I'm at.
the priestly class is that you have to, and they would just rather if you didn't understand their words. They want to bring back the Greek, you know. But I do want, if you do link stuff in your show notes, I should send you a study. It was very hard for me to find it broken out between people who had 0 shots, 1 shot, 2 shots, and over time of getting sick or dying from they're calling it the Delta variant now. I think, I don't know if it's any really different, but I have that from England.
A question for you. Yeah. I don't know if you know, because I can't understand it at all. So PCR test is how we identify if you have coronavirus. Okay. How are any of the PCR tests identifying strains?
But instead, they changed it in May of 2021 to now start calling variations by Greek letters, which is I would call that an abomination against science, because actually confuses.
Trust the science, right? I thought that's what we were doing.
Yes.
Yeah. No, actually,
we could go on forever, obviously.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's yeah, absolutely. No, I really love talking to you. I do.
Yeah, it's been super fun.
To wrap it up, though. Why don't you tell everyone where they can find you? Like obviously not WordPress anymore.
No, I have hobbled together a site that will never go away. It's like got belts and suspenders on it, but it doesn't hum like the WordPress one does. But it does have a little forum where people can post their headlines and talk to each other about it, because I have a nice little community bubbling up of my propaganda report. So that website is thepropreport.com, and it has a continuous player of the daily show. I do a daily show with my partner, Brad Binkley, and every day we bring news of the day from a perspective of truth, liberty, and justice. And it's just like this, as I have insights like this, I bring them, but mostly we try to make it so you don't have to listen to the radio or watch TV and still know what's going on. And then we tell you why they're telling you, not what policy you should believe, but what bullshit they're trying to feed you. And that's helpful. And then we do deep dives on Rockfin, where a lot you really see the guys plotting to bring these propaganda efforts, and you can see the BS before it starts rolling out. And boy, are you inoculated against that wave of crap. That's helpful. So that's rockfin.com/propaganda report and patreon.com/propaganda report. We have a lot of fun stuff on there, but mostly just go to the Propaganda Report on your favorite podcasting platform.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time, and I had a great one. Thank you.
Thank you. I know, you know what, Camden, why don't you tell us where we can find you? Is it too late so that I can put this in my feed?
Totally. No, we're so Generation Z podcast on YouTube. Most of the videos will have links to our Patreon, Gen Z podcast on Patreon. We've been looking into Rockfin.
Rockfin. I would love to
we've been looking
introduce you to my guy at Rockfin. I absolutely
we were on Total
Legit Bat.
We were on Legit Bat on Rockfin. I enjoyed it. So we're looking into that too.
That's great.
Yeah, but so Patreon and YouTube right now is where we're at, and Generation Z podcast, and I had a great time. And if you ever want me on the Propaganda Report, I will get me and Dave on there. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, we should do that. We do 2 interviews a month, which isn't as much as most of the podcasters, but yes, we should. And we like to do subject matter experts. So maybe you guys can bring some of the more the stuff that I don't cover. Like I am absolutely if I can't jump that high, I'm not covering it. So anything above 12 feet, I would love you guys to bring. So let's make a date.
We could do it. Yeah.
All right, fantastic.
We'll get into it. Yep.
All right. Thanks, Camden.
Yep.